all for coming out today. Our topic is writing for low-watt brains in the age of AI. I was just remembering yesterday, remember that paper clip that would pop up on Windows? It looks like you're writing a business letter. Would you like me to help you format it? Well, I'm getting that same thing these days. It seems like every app I load is trying to take over my computer, rewrite the paperclip is my sworn enemy. I wonder how you're feeling about all these AI pop-ups now. Says, oh, it looks like you're going to be writing a dissertation. Would you like me to conduct research and provide a list of annotated references? I mean, AI just seems to be taking over all of our writing, all of our communications. At least it wants to tweak it, reformat it, make it sound a little prettier. I've been teaching communication courses for, oh my God, since 2000, 2025, up to 2025. I used to be able to open a paper and have a pretty good guess just what kind of grade it was going to get. You'd see the layout, you'd see if there were any typos or not, or just how much they cared about their work. And that was a pretty good indicator of their grade. Well, these days, AI has all of that covered. I'm getting letter perfect submissions, even from students that haven't done all that well in the past. And grammar, punctuation, spelling, organization, it all comes through perfectly. AI has that covered really well. But what it is, it seems like it is missing a spark of life. A lot of what I'm reading these days, there's no touch of inspiration there. And really, what we need to do is we need to expand our digital work here with this rich analog of understanding and context and perceptions of the living mind. And that's what I want to talk about right now is some immediate tips that we can use to better connect our words to the hearts and the minds of others. And that's especially critical as our human touch becomes an even scarcer and richer skill. We need to keep these skills alive. We need to keep them real. We need to keep them human. And, it's becoming even more important. It is so hard to break through people's natural barriers. I mean, we're exposed to some 3,000 marketing messages a day. Whether it is junk mail or banner ads or radio or TV commercials, skywriting, personalized ads that know just where we are and what we're doing, and if we might be open to some lunch suggestions, for example. And we have to block these out. We have to block out these people and their messages, or we'd simply be overwhelmed. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at ways to boost our communication process in the age of AI, how to connect with humans across barriers and our brain limitation. And we're going to look at some tips and tactics that my international students tell me work really well across languages, languages and culture. Some of these tips we're going to be looking at. Here's a little bit more about me and some about our topic today. Wow, boy, I'm getting some lag here. There we go. Okay, and I have been teaching for a number of universities. UCSB is where I started. Back in 2000, UCLA National University, teaching communication courses with an awful lot of international students. Some of my courses are all international students. Before I was teaching communications, I was a communicator. I worked in news media for a number of years, a local TV anchor. I managed a TV bureau in Moscow covering the fall of the Soviet Union. Again, trying to find communication skills, ways to connect with people, mindsets and cultural backgrounds and history, just so different from our own. And also worked in a number of nonprofit organizations and dealing with different strata of society, trying to bridge communications there as well. It is a fact. Professional communicators, whatever field you might be in, whether it is media or education, we can only expect so much from our listeners. Given that the human brain only runs on some 12 watts of power. Last time I presented here, one of our scientists said, well, it may be estimated up to 25 watts of power powering our brain. That is still less power than it takes to light a refrigerator bulb. I'm pretty sure I'm at the lower end of that range. I'm a pretty dim bulb sometimes. So what this means is we have to minimize our demands on our audience for their attention and their focus while we seek a maximum return from our efforts trying to connect with them with brevity and simplicity and resonant messages, and hopefully connecting with them without too much of a brain drain on their part, especially if they haven't had their coffee yet. I haven't had my coffee yet today. I could use a good sip of green tea right about now. Here's one of the tips: is write for an eighth grade level of reading. I had one teacher pop up once. No, they're awful. Well, I don't mean write like an eighth grader. I mean write for an eighth grader, one syllable words instead of multiple syllable words. We're not trying to impress anybody. We can use instead of utilize. It also means keeping sentences short and using bullet items, perhaps, for briefer passing on of detail and information. Also using smaller paragraphs, 4 sentences instead of 8, so they're not overwhelmed with this big block of text. Another tip here, we'll check out, by the way, the response, bringing our writing down to a lower level. We may be writing for college-educated people well placed out there in the business world, but nonetheless, they're going to appreciate if we can bring our message to them simply and clearly, hopefully getting a decision right then and there. Look at the increase in response. You get a higher response writing for a third grade reading level than you do writing at a high school level. Even writing in a kindergarten level, look, you get a higher response level than writing for college and high school levels. So go ahead, bring your writing on down. It doesn't mean dumb down your message. It just means simplifying how that message gets put across. One of the first steps for connecting with our low watt brains, our limited attention span, is to use what psychologists and sociologists and marketers have been referring to for years and years now. 12 fundamental appeals. How to manipulate the idiot with writing. We're going to be talking a little bit about that, as a matter of fact. What is the difference between manipulating and informing? It's a subtle line there sometimes, isn't it? These 12 appeals, I could spend an hour just talking about these, but in a nutshell, let me just quickly go over these, what we're talking about here. One of the surest appeals is security and safety. Danger, fire, that's really going to capture people's attention quickly. Possessions, we all like stuff. We like comparing our stuff with other people's stuff. Possessions is a strong appeal. What else do we have here? Imitating others, especially for young people. We don't want to stand out as too different from one another. That tends to diminish as we get older. We like standing out, don't we? As we do get older, good health becomes a stronger appeal to us. Possessions are not a strong appeal for everybody, no, but they sure are for some. Keeping up with the Joneses, look what your neighbors have got. Sex and romantic drives, we see that. A lot of ads now for dating apps. You see that. Still, it's a drive that goes deep, maybe more into younger people. Curiosity is a strong appeal. I think that gets back to security as well. We're curious about unusual things that we haven't seen before, so it captures our attention. Is it going to eat us, or can we eat it? We become curious. And then there's beauty, beautiful things, beautiful scenery, good, beautiful paintings appeal to us. And then there's play and relaxation. We like to have fun. Lots of ads appeal to that. Cruise lines where everybody just looks like they're having the best time of their life. Another strong appeal, if you want to capture somebody's attention, is to make them feel important. VIPs, lots of products, services use that appeal. VIP travel, you deserve to be first class, and we're going to treat you that way. That's a number 9. Feeling important. And there's physical pleasure. That's a strong appeal. We're talking about, maybe bubble baths or a nice massage chair. People just like to imagine feeling good, picturing that. If you can give me some imagery, that's going to capture my attention. And then there is love is a very strong appeal. Our love for others, our love for our children, our love for our pets. That's a pretty good way of winning their attention. And then finally is avoiding discomfort. It may not be something that we have right now, but something we want to avoid, an insect repellent perhaps, or life insurance, something that just keeps us from experiencing bad things. I love looking at the chats. Whenever I look at that chats, it always distracts me, and I lose my place in my notes, but I seem to find my way back again. That's where the fun stuff is happening, in the chat. One thing we have to be aware of in our communications is that the brain gives extra juice, quite a bit of extra juice, to negative thoughts or negative experiences over positive, about 5 times as much, actually. And there's a good reason for that, why we love our bad thoughts. As we look at disasters on the news, and we listen to cruel gossip, and we fixate so much more on criticism of ourselves rather than words of praise. And we can tear ourselves apart over a very simple mistake. And these are psychological and evolutionary rooted traits. What's wrong with cool gossip? Well, it's a good way to capture people's attention, is with the negativity. And we have lots of examples on the doctors, for example. You go to a doctor, he isn't going to tell you about everything that's right about you. He's going to tell you what's wrong and what needs to get fixed. So we need to keep that in mind as well, is that also, if we want to counter this, we need to keep in mind this magic ratio. You see it right there, of 5 to 1. We need 5 positive things to counter every negative thing. Does the purpose for which you are capturing attention matters? Yes, very much so, I would say. And that's one criticism that we have against effective communication tools is, I've heard this at meetings, is a good communicator is the worst person to have at a meeting, because they can take any position and make it sound logical and reasonable, or then argue the opposite perspective as well. But that's a whole different topic, isn't it? Well, we're just going to assume that everybody here is a good person. You're educators, you're scientists, you're looking to go out and share good things with the world. But first, you got to get their attention. Well, here's another tip for you, is to avoid the dissonant messages. And this is something I know I've lectured on a number of times in Second Life: transcultural relations, transcultural communication. So once we do have their attention, we have to be very careful that we don't alienate them with inappropriate context for whatever position they happen to have. So we need to create resonance in the room, especially when we have a wide range of cultural backgrounds, different nationalities. Think of speaking to the United Nations, you know, how you're going to have to modify your approach and try to be as transculturally resonant as you can. What you do stay away from: humor, sex, religion, politics, all the things that you don't talk about at a party, for example. Instead, we want to focus on themes and images that resonate across diverse groups, across our cultural differences. Or you can just bang your shoe on the table. There's a Khrushchev reference. You're dating yourself there a little bit, guy. Or maybe there's another reference prior to Khrushchev, since Khrushchev. I'm not going to review these more in depth, and I'm going to be sharing some resources, some links at the end of this if you want to look more at any one of these topics. Also, if you want access, you can download these files in a PDF. They have the activated links. If you'd like to see a video, I have a 10-minute video on transcultural themes and images and how they work. Which can be very effective in achieving resonance with a group, but getting their attention in a group is making sure you're contextually and culturally relevant to their lives. Also speaking, we're going to look a bit more at writing. We're not going to get into grammar, punctuation, spelling. We're going to look at some tips on how best to grab the attention and connect with your audience. One of these tips is, well, keep your speaking speed at about the right at about the right tempo. And this right here, the studies have shown this is the best speed for relaying attention while also maximizing the attention of your audience. And that is right between 140 to 180 words per minute. That sounds really fast, doesn't it? But you know, I'm speaking faster than that right now. I'm speaking probably closer to 200 words a minute because I'm trying to get so much in a very limited window here. But the best speaking speed would be right around 40 words in 15 seconds. Multiply that before you get 160. So if you want to give it a try, there's a really nice reading here. 40 words, it should come out to about 15 seconds. That's about 3 words per second. Let me bring my pace down to about 160 words. It would be like this. Do not be untruthful, but also don't feel the need to be hurtful. That would be more of the speaking speed. And of course, you would speed it up a little bit if you want to convey urgency, or you might slow it down and emphasize each single word if you want to emphasize import. But on average, you're looking to have about a 160 rate of speed for best audience retention of your message. You may have heard about elevator speeches. I'm a big advocate of those. You never know when or type very slowly. I love the chat. You want to make sure that you have this ready to go. Abraham Lincoln once said, you know, if you want me to speak for 3 hours, I'm ready right now. But if you want me to speak for 3 minutes, it's going to take me a day to prepare, because you want to make sure that every single word matters. And that's what an elevator speech is. You know, the idea you're in an elevator, you have about a minute before you get off. What are you going to do if an opportunity presents itself? So you should have these topics in your pocket, ready to go, especially if you're on a job search. Can you sum up in just 30 seconds what kind of job you're looking for, why you're qualified? Same thing with funding or your personal background, interview questions. What are your life goals? Where do you want to be 10 years from now? philosophical belief. What do you know for a fact? What do you know to be true? I've seen that asked as interview questions. So you want to keep these in your pocket. And there's a video here on how to best go about preparing your elevator speech. Typically, you want to keep it very tight, in just 3 to 4 points. Mostly, you want to be talking about what you can do to help them. So you might, for example, very quickly, in just 5 seconds, who am I? Another 5 seconds, what I've done, and then spend the next 20 seconds. Now, what can I offer you? How is this going to benefit you? How can I help make your life better? And that's how you have an effective elevator speech. Here's a sample of mine. This is a 40-second elevator speech. I can't tell you how many times I've given a variation on this. What I advise is go ahead, make it long. Write yourself a 2-minute elevator speech and then boil it down to whatever the particular situation is. If you're talking to an academic, you might want to talk more about your education and your courses that you teach. If you're talking to a reporter, you might want to talk about your background in media. But in general, you want to have a nice, simple, tight piece of communication that you can turn to in an instant. And this brings us to the heart of what I want to share with you today is some very best all-time favorite writing tips for connecting your message with the hearts and minds of other people, however low watt those minds might be. This is based on a writing program developed at the University of Chicago, their graduate school of business. I had a hand in that as well. I've taught this course for the MBA program a number of years. Students would say this is their favorite course in the entire MBA program because they can put it to work right now. It's very practical. It's a 6-week course, but I'm going to give you the essence of it here in about 15 minutes. And again, it's not about grammar, spelling, or punctuation. We're going to assume AI has that covered for you. What you need to bring in to make yourself relevant in this age of automated text is you need to be able to bring in some life, some flesh and blood. You need to bring in a pulse and make it live. I had a course like this in college. Did you go to the University of Chicago by any chance, guy? Actually, this has been around for some time now. I'm sure it's diffusing out there. One of the first tips, and probably maybe the best tip, is use resident flesh and blood characters rather than boring old nouns. Pretend you're telling a story, for example, to your 6-year-old daughter. What kind of characters, flesh and blood characters, are you going to use? You're not going to be using sales projections and CEOs. You're going to be referring to princesses and ponies and unicorns, or perhaps warrior fighters and space explorers. Now that's what's going to hold the attention of your particular audience for bedtime story. So grown-ups are the same. When we hear a story, when somebody is telling us about something, we don't want to hear boring old abstract concepts. We want to hear characters that have flesh and blood and a pulse and that we could take to lunch. And for example, if I was writing a memo about management issues, my characters would be managers and employees rather than infrastructure and completion dates. Very boring. For a university memo, we might write about teachers and students as characters rather than grades and tuition. For sales writing, we might talk about customers and clients rather than projects and commissions. Here is an example of wrong, and I'm going to be giving these throughout. I'm going to show you typically how we write, how executives write, how students write. And then I'm going to ask you, well, using some of these concepts, how might you rephrase it? And here's an example right there. Professional advancement is achieved through hard work. What might we do to bring in a living character? Now, we don't want to change the intent of our message in any way. We may even add some words. Typically, we want to take words away if we can, but we may even need to add some words. Let me show you this example right here. We're going to use a resonant character instead of this boring old subject of professional advancement. And we're going to say managers achieve success through hard work. It says the same thing, but now it brings in a living, breathing character that your audience can relate to, and that's going to help grab their attention among those 3,000 other messages trying to dig into their brain. Now that we have resonant characters, well, they wanna see those characters do something. They want to visualize what's going on. So we're going to use strong, active, visual verbs that propel our readers through our writing. Is probably one of the weakest verbs ever made. It's just something simply is. It isn't doing anything other than existing, being is in its isness. So what we want to do is bring in an action verb that still relays the same information here. Is the passive voice. There you go. Well, but we're not going to be talking about grammar here. We say the manager crafted the memo with resonant characters and strong verbs. Look, now we've got a character that we can relate to, the manager, and we've got a verb that we can visualize the manager doing, like he was making some pottery or something, crafting the memo with resonant characters and strong verbs. And this just becomes such a bigger attention getter. Strong verbs, love strong verbs. I've actually, there's going to be some resources I list here. One of them is some 200 action verbs. People are always saying use action verbs. They break them down into categories: business action verbs, science action verbs, engineering action verbs. A real useful reading. And that'll be in the resources I'm going to share with you at the end here. Now that we have our character and our action, we want to keep them close together because that's what people that's what they want answered, is who is doing what. So the faster we can get that across, who is doing what, the less of a drain it's going to be on our listeners' attention. So we want to keep those close together, as close as possible, no more than 8 words. Right next to each other is even better. Here's a bad example, a wrong example. The manager responsible for the daily assignments and our worker allocation charts in our department is sick today. Look at that. 13 words between the subject, the manager, and the object being sick today. Too many words. We've worn our listener out. So what might we do instead? And plus, look at that week. There's that week is. Our department manager called in sick today, so we are missing the daily assignments on our worker allocation charts. What we've done is we put a character and an action right next to each other, and that has hopefully hooked the attention of our listener. Now we're going to try to make it as easy as possible. Remember those 12 to 25 watts. We're trying to minimize our demand on that. So we use explicit connectors. This is such an effective tool. Basically, you take your audience by the hand and gently lead them through your message. In this case, the wrong example, the manager didn't treat the workers well. Workers were poorly motivated and often quit. Now we have to pause between those two sentences and wonder, are these two ideas connected or aren't they? They look like they're connected, but maybe not. So what we want to do is remove that doubt and just gently bring them from one sentence or one idea to the next. The manager mistreated the worker because of that. There's your explicit connector. Because of that, The workers suffered from poor motivation and often quit. Therefore, and is a connector. Anything that lets your listener or your audience know that this idea is connected to that idea is going to help a lot. You're going to see in a moment here, I'm going to show you an effective rewrite of some pretty bad copy. Almost every sentence begins with an explicit connector. People really like those. Lead your readers from old to new. Basically, we're pretty lazy as creatures, and also, we're kind of fearful as creatures. So anything new that gets thrown at us, we tend to have an automatic reflex of withdraw from it. And that's just to be expected. Oh, I've just figured out this way, and now you want me to figure out a new way. So what you want to do is you want to make that transition gentle from old, comfortable, common ground to the new territory. One example, here's the wrong example. We're going to mix the new formula with the following steps. This will modify our old procedures. Actually, we're doing the opposite right here of what we should be doing. We should be putting the old information first, make it comfortable, and then bring in the new information. Bam, there we are. Our existing protocol calls for mixing the formula with established procedures. People are nodding their head. Yes, I already know that. I'm feeling pretty confident. Our new method is going to improve upon that in the following ways. And you've just gently brought them from old familiar territory into your new way of doing things. So that's just basic formatting. How are we going to phrase our message? Motivated as excellent example, Sis. Thank you so much. Okay, and finally, here we are in our 6th week now. You may be wondering, how do you get 6 weeks out of this? Well, first week we have them rewrite whatever, student papers, love notes, letters to mom, whatever. We have them rewrite that with step 1 using resonant characters. And then step 2 next week. Now rewrite all of that using action verbs until we finally get to our 6th week here. And this is probably the most common a problem I hear coming from students is I know what I want to say. I just don't know how to say it. I don't know how to make the architecture. I don't know how to lay it out so it just has a logical flow to it. Well, that's where we bring in this solution action, a problem solution action paradigm, PSA. And if you use this, actually your message starts to write itself. Number 1, we have a problem. We are losing valuable workers. Okay, well, now you've got their attention. They don't want to just hear about a problem. They want to hear a solution. Oh, I'm sure you've had workers or co-workers or colleagues that just love constantly pointing out problems, but they never have a solution. But pointing out a problem makes them feel like they're contributing or that they have something valuable to say, when really what it does, it's only 1/3 of the issue. We know we have a problem. Bring a solution. Okay, let's create a worker retention program. Wonderful. But still not complete. Well, how are we going to do that? How are we going to pay for it? How are we going to schedule it? Well, then you bring in your call to action. Let's hire a consultancy for manager training next month. And now suddenly you have 3 sentences and a complete memo that has written itself. We have our problem. Here's a solution. Here's our call to action. PSA. In 3 sentences, you can write an effective memo. That's how dissertations begin, isn't it? Or master's theses, those in the room doing those. You start with a problem statement. We have a problem, but that's just the beginning, isn't it? Now you got to flesh it out. So here are our top 6 communication tips. Go ahead, put this on your monitor, clip this out, give it a try, watch the video. I'm going to be sharing with you in a moment and see how well this works. Resonant characters, people that flesh and blood characters, not necessarily people, it can be animals that resonate with your audience, and action verbs so they can visualize your character doing something interesting, keep the action and the characters close together. No more than 8 words. Use lots of explicit connectors. I'm going to show you an example of that. Lead your readers from old, comfortable information to the new stuff you want them to know, and then use a PSA paradigm to put it all together. This course was designed, by the way, for graduate students, master's, MBA students, so they could quickly learn some effective communication skills without having to take writing courses. And they would say, time after time, they would tell me this was their most useful class, their favorite class. Here's some examples. Let's take a look at this. This is how writing typically comes across, especially if people aren't really sure what they're trying to say, or more often than not, if they're trying to hide what it is they're really, what you're really trying to get at anyway. I found that as a journalist, the more complicated they made their answers quite often, the more they were trying to hide. So here it is, a wrong example. We see stuff written like this all the time. Developmental success for everyone within an organization, from top to bottom and all steps in between, is ensured when good work is encouraged among the frontline people. Those responsible for leadership will get more loyalty and harder work from their team members if they treat them well. Now, I've had classes put this on the board. The students don't even agree on what the original message was, let alone how to fix it. And that's when you know you really have bad writing, is when they go, huh? So instead, let's look at this. I just have to keep an eye on the chat here. Now let's go, as we go through this rewrite, I'm going to point out our various tips. Our company success is important to us all. First of all, there's the common ground. You may think, oh, everybody's already going to know this. What a tedious thing to say, but really it makes people comfortable. It makes them feel confident when they hear right off of the bat stuff they already know. Well, we have some characters there. Our company, in this case, is considered, would be considered a character. Unfortunately, now there is one of those explicit connectors that also foreshadows a problem statement in our PSA structure. Unfortunately, we have a costly turnover of valuable workers. Costly turnover, now there's a verbal phrase that's interesting. That's some action engagement there. Workers, there's a resonant character. And most importantly, we now have our problem statement. Next sentence, however, look, there's another linking word, and it lets them know that, well, possibly here is a solution coming. However, our managers can remedy this by recognizing, respecting, and rewarding the good efforts of our workers. Look at all the good action verbs there. Recognize, respect, reward. We got characters, managers, and workers. We got a linking word there, however. And we also have a solution statement. Look how good this is all working together. I'm seeing some suggestions there. Never work harder to overcome our leaders' incompetence. Well written. Look, it's got resonant characters. It's got a good verb, overcome. And it's got a connecting word. And success will come. There you go. Excellent. A+ work, Stephen. Anything else here? Okay, where did we leave off? We left off with the solution. Now we need to have an action statement. Solution isn't enough. What steps are we going to take? Such responsive managers may win the loyalty and best efforts of our team. There's some more good characters. Therefore, another good linking word, we should hire a consultant for managerial training. There's our PSA format. There's our characters. There's our action words. Close together. There are our linking words. There's our old information to new information. and wraps it all up with a nice action statement. Look what a difference it makes in the writing and the clarity of the writing. And it's just using these three very basic, simple tools. Make sure you're using characters that resonate with your particular audience, whether it's a 6-year-old bedtime story or a science hall presentation. Make sure you're using characters that resonate with your audience. Use action verbs so they can visualize. I'm going to give you a link to some of those resources in just a moment. The 8-word test: keep your nouns, your characters, and your actions close together. Use lots of explicit connectors. Every sentence even, you might see it doesn't come across as overkill. Lead your readers from old to new information, making it comfortable, and then use the PSA paradigm: problem, solution, action. If you can take just a quick screenshot of that, put it on your computer, try the next thing that you rewrite. We've already seen a great example from Stephen right here. See how easy it is? Speaking of consultants, I've worked as a consultant for a number of years. It's actually quite often the solution to whatever internal problem they may be having. If Yeah, maybe I'll hire since he is a consultant. Well, because if they had the internal solution, the internal answers, they would have already come up with it. Or maybe if they had the mechanisms to implement it, or especially a very difficult solution. So you bring in a consultant, they do the hard, heavy work, they bring the bad news, and then they leave, and then the management gets to fix their mess. Bringing in a consultant is quite often is the action that gets chosen. Bring me as a consultant, I'll tell you all about it. And we just it's just so important. Those of us that are educators or involved out there in the world in some capacity, just the fact that you're here today says that you're one of those. I love to quote Fyodor Dostoevsky when people say, I talk and talk, but nobody ever listens. Dostoevsky says, if that's the case, then you need to fall down on their knees and beg their forgiveness, because in truth, you are to blame. You haven't given them a reason to listen. You haven't given them a presentation of information that they can absorb and digest. So we need to make sure that our intentions focus on the listener, not what our message is, but how we're going to make our listener's life better. Especially if they're only going to share a few watts of brain power with you to get there. And our intentions, good intentions, somebody brought that up earlier. Well, can we use all these tactics for bad intentions to relay bad information, dangerous information, harmful information? Well, yes, we can. But nonetheless, I think that's pretty obvious when we see it. Harriet Beecher Stowe points out our intentions radiate from us. People sense it before we even start speaking. What's the line? Before they care what you know, they got to know that you care. So Harriet Beecher Stowe, author of Uncle Tom's Cabin, Abraham Lincoln creditor, said, so you're the little lady who started this great war. Had a fantastic impact on the times. She talks about this sympathetic influence that encircles every being, for better or worse. She says we touch others simply by being and not necessarily having to do anything. And I love that idea. A lazy guy like me, that you can actually accomplish stuff by doing nothing, simply by being and having good intent. A very direct way to connect with people's hearts and minds. Ukraine, yeah, that just breaks my heart. I worked in both Russia and Ukraine. I lived there for 4 years. I married a Ukrainian, half Russian. It just breaks my heart what's going on there today. Okay, as promised, here's some really good stuff. My course materials, all of these video lectures and readings I supply to my students. I've done this for 25 years. I publish a resource site. Lots of Ukrainian relatives. Yeah, very sad time over there. Very brave people. Nobody's trying to sell you anything. Any of these materials that I'm referencing to, these are materials I use as an educator. I have no financial stake in this. I'm not pushing anything. Nothing is for sale. If any of the links do try to sell you something, let me know. And I will replace that link. I also have a YouTube channel, Transcultural Relations, these top 6 business writing tips. There's a 10-minute video on that. That's all at my educational YouTube video. And there's also my research website, Transcultural Communications. Such an important field to specialize these days. I can't tell you how many consultancy positions, how many teaching positions, lecturing invites, simply because of my transcultural background, being able to connect people across these barriers. If you're looking for an effective tool to put on your resume these days, I would include transcultural communications, the ability to connect across divisions. And here's some articles on that, more from an academic perspective. Dutch stubbornness. I'm not only Dutch stubborn Van Hook, but I'm a Taurus and an Irish, half Irish on top of that. Bullheaded for sure. Some good articles here. You're welcome to use these, refer to them, and again, download the PDF, and you can access all these links right there on the slides. Any comments, questions? I'm glad to entertain those right now. We have a few minutes left before I need to clear out, before you need to get on with your life. There's a street in Panama named after somebody here. Uh, Stephen, when I was in the Netherlands, I was in Amsterdam. There was a restaurant there called Van Hook. It simply means on the corner or of the corner. Maybe questionable work that my ancestors did working on a corner. I don't know. Van Hook, yeah, it just means on the corner. Well, thank you everybody for turning out. I will go back through this chat. I do love reading this, and if there's any questions there I can respond to, I'll get back to you a little bit later. I'm teaching 6 classes this term, 6 university classes, and I've got one of them waiting on me now. I'm going to get back to them. Thank you so much for turning out. Thank you for the Science Circle, the history of the Science Circle. I've been with you since about the start. I love this organization. Whenever I'm talking to any group about developments in virtual world, Science Circle is high on my talking points of an example. This is what we're aiming for. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everybody.